World War II was not just a conflict, it was a global event that would reshape the world in ways that we are still coming to terms with today. The human cost was staggering. More than 70 million lives lost, with civilian casualties far outnumbering those of soldiers. But what led to this catastrophic war? How did the fragile peace after World War I collapse into another, even more devastating conflict? In this documentary, we will explore the causes, the major events, and the enduring consequences of World War II, piecing together the complex history of one of the deadliest and most transformative wars in human history. To understand the outbreak of World War II, we must first look at the world that existed before the war. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, formally ended World War I, but its terms laid the foundation for future conflict. Germany was held responsible for the war and forced to pay reparations, totaling 132 billion gold marks, roughly $33 billion at the time. These punitive measures deeply embittered the German population and created an economic crisis worsened by the Great Depression of the early 1930s. In Germany, Adolf Hitler rose to power in the early 1930s, capitalizing on the widespread discontent with the Treaty of Versailles and the economic collapse. As the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, he promised to restore Germany's pride and reclaim lost territory. Hitler's rise was not an isolated event, but part of a broader trend in Europe: fascism in Italy under Benito Mussolini, and the rise of militarism in Japan. Hitler's goals were clear: to overturn the post-Versailles order, expand German territory, and establish a totalitarian state built on Aryan racial superiority. By the mid-1930s, Hitler had already begun to challenge the post-Versailles order. In 1936, German troops remilitarized the Rhineland, a region demilitarized by the Treaty of Versailles to act as a buffer between Germany and France. The Western powers, still traumatized by the First World War, hesitated to respond. Hitler's boldness paid off. The policy of appeasement, especially championed by Britain's Neville Chamberlain, led to further concessions, culminating in the 1938 Munich Agreement, which allowed Hitler to annex Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland. The war began in earnest on September 1, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. This marked the end of appeasement and the beginning of World War II. Hitler's invasion was a lightning-fast blitzkrieg, employing coordinated strikes by tanks, air force, and infantry. Within weeks, Poland was divided between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, which had secretly signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty. This alliance between two ideological enemies shocked the world. By mid-1940, Germany had conquered much of Europe. Only Britain stood defiant. The Battle of Britain, fought entirely in the air, became a symbol of British resilience. The Luftwaffe launched a sustained bombing campaign aimed at crippling the Royal Air Force. But the British, led by Prime Minister Winston Churchill, resisted. The Royal Air Force, despite being outnumbered, successfully defended the skies and prevented a German invasion. The war's scale continued to expand. In 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, the largest military operation in history. Initially, German forces made significant advances, but by the winter of 1941, they were halted at the gates of Moscow. The following year, the Battle for Stalingrad would become the war's bloodiest conflict. More than 2 million soldiers and civilians were killed in what would become a decisive turning point. In 1944, the Allies launched a massive invasion of Normandy, D-Day. The successful landings opened a second front in Europe, forcing Germany to fight on two fronts. By mid-1944, Allied forces were pushing through France, liberating Paris by August. As the Allies advanced, the Soviet Red Army was pushing westward from the east, tightening the noose around Nazi Germany. In the Pacific, the United States and Japan were locked in a brutal struggle. After key victories in the Battle of Midway and the island-hopping campaign, the U.S. reached Japan's doorstep. In August 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan to surrender and bringing an end to the war. The war's aftermath was profound. Europe lay in ruins. The death toll was staggering, and millions were displaced. The world had to rebuild. The United Nations was established in 1945 to prevent future conflicts, and the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union began to take shape. World War II reshaped everything: nations, ideologies, and lives. As historian A.J.P. Taylor said, "It was a war of survival, not accidents." Its scars still echo today. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, and share for more history in a flash.